Bar for bar album reviews. Guapdad 4000 and llmind, 1176. 1176 is the latest project from West Oakland rapper Guapdad 4000 and producer llmind. This album follows his debut album, Dior Deposits, as well as his Platinum Flacon Returns tape that dropped last year. With this album, Guapdad wanted to tell us a story and take us on an adventure. Throughout this project, we get what is essentially an autobiography of his life growing up. This is a different direction than his last album for sure, but it does a really good job of fleshing out the scammer's backstory. Most people have likely heard of Guapdad 4000 from the Revenge of the Dreamers 3 album, where he was featured pretty heavily, and it's also where I first heard of him. That combined with his performance on tour with Earth Gang when I first saw him at the New Parish in Oakland is what really made me a fan. This album comes in at a total runtime of 43 minutes, so it is a little bit on the longer end, but it definitely did not feel that way while listening to it. 1176 starts off with the first single, How Many, which heavily samples Alice DJ's Better Off Alone. It's an interesting opening to the album because it feels almost like a reflection on what he's done in the past and things that he's noticed throughout his years. The gist of the song is seen with the chorus, where it feels like he's fed up with whoever it is that he's with or just the people with him. They keep asking him questions, making sure that he's getting the money. Meanwhile, they're just out there chilling, getting high and drinking. This flows right into the next single, She Wanna, which features another Bay Area native, Pilo. This song to me is really reminiscent of songs by The Pack back in like the late 2000s. But I feel like a lot of listeners are probably not here for it. I personally like the song for what it is, like it's a tribute to that sort of era, because Guapdad and I grew up around the same time. He's just 1 year older than me, So even though that's what the tribute's for, I didn't really care for it too much. I didn't really go back to it as much. With Tenfinity, the tone switches up a little bit. Here, Guapdad is again looking back at things that he's seen as he grew up because he was stuck on 10. Here, I believe 10 is in reference to 10th Street, where he grew up in Oakland. Being stuck on 10 could be either about just watching everything from the house, or events that are happening around him that puts him back in the same mindset. He just keeps going back to 10. The first few lines are pretty important too, with Black and Filipino, not to the police though. To them I'm a target, stealing from Target. Most people probably wouldn't think that Guapdad is part Filipino because he doesn't look like it. And the same goes for the police. They probably don't think that either. Beyond that, the Target line is in reference to an incident that happened back in January, where there were 3 black teenagers who were falsely accused of stealing from the Target at Westlake. It's also a nice touch to have what I assume is the sound of Bart leaving the station at the end of the song. Big Shot is one of the most braggadocious songs on this album, where the entirety of the song is just him talking about how he's a big shot. It's a fun song, especially with the production though. We then get to Catching Bodies, which may sound like an aggressive song based on the title alone. And I guess it kinda is, but not in the way that you would expect. The bodies that he's catching here aren't from shooting them, but it's because of his fits and his overall swagger. He just kills it every time he steps outside. At least that's what I took from that track. Next we have Chandler, which is named after the character from Friends. It's an interesting choice, seeing as the chorus starts off the track with cockiness and braggadociousness that are traits that I don't feel Chandler had, but to be fair, I also haven't watched enough of Friends to say, so. If we take the Friends reference out of the picture, the song is pretty solid. Again, here he's just flexing and talking about how he's too busy out here getting cash. Mohammed is one of my favorite songs on this album, and it's mostly due to the beat and Guapdad's flow. This track does a really good job of showing the listener what Guapdad's done and why he does it. It starts off with him bragging about the money that he has now and how he's a scammer, but as we go through the chorus, we learn that his parents also trapped. It's almost like that rubbed off onto him as he grew up. This song could take place back when he was really in the scammer bag, or it could be now. But I'd like to think that it was back then because he's, throughout the song, trying to provide for the people closest to him with the things that they want. Although, I mean, now he can probably do that without any real issue. The other reason I feel like this could be from the past is with the mention of both of his parents being in jail and them wanting him to go to school and just be in school, but he's out here scamming. Touch Dough is a really good follow-up to Mohammed, and is solidly and appropriately placed in the middle of the scammer tracks, in my mind. It samples Let My Nuts Go from Lil Jon East Side Boys featuring the Nation Riders, Quint Black, and Too Short. This is only important to me because of the Bay influence. The track starts off right away with him claiming that you'll never be a better scammer than him. This is a really good follow-up to Muhammad because we can assume that this mindset takes place shortly after he starts getting money off of scamming, so he's kind of bragging about it and seeing people's responses to it. The third in this scammer three-piece of songs is Downgrade. Now, the only reason I say that this is like related to those songs is because it feels like these three tracks were a progression of sorts. Now he's at the point where he was either not scamming or not messing around with multiple women. So he's found someone and was working on changing himself, but they did him wrong, and so he's downgrading back to his old him. I also do like the nod to Captain Save-A-Ho towards the end of the track as well. This track, I guess, could be seen as the start of the more introspective tracks that we're getting through the remainder of this project, though. This brings us to my favorite track on this album, Uncle Ricky. This track takes us through a day with Guapdad and his Uncle Ricky. Apparently, he's the type of uncle that just says all these things to make you think that he's there for you, but in reality, he's just saying those things to get what he wants. It initially starts off with what sounds like a drug deal because Ricky got some syrup and drugs to sell to this lady. Cool. Nothing too crazy, right? Well, as things progress, it turns out that this lady owes Ricky $500 and probably doesn't have it. So they grab her, Ricky hands Guap a Tech 9 and tells him to get it fixed and take care of the lady's baby daddy. I might have oversimplified it, but when you listen to the song, you'll get a better idea of how intense the situation must have been. Plus, having the heater broken in the car when it's already hot outside probably did not help. I really do enjoy the beat and the way the song was done, though. The tone shifts a little bit again with Gargoyles featuring Tish Hyman. The song is a bit more of a follow-up to Downgrade in my opinion, but it works in this position too. The gist of this is that Guapdad was in an open relationship and things were good for a while. However, he had built up these walls to keep himself, I guess, walled off from others and himself. With these walls, he's been able to ignore his emotions, but eventually they get back to him because he says, but when I get sad like this, I'd be like, man, fuck these fucking bitches. It's like he's realized that he actually cares for this other person, but because of their agreement, I guess, he doesn't feel comfortable being with them. He mentions that he's starting to have these problems that he's never had before, and maybe that's because he's walled himself off for so long, thinking that he's just wanted something else this entire time. Or maybe I'm just looking too into it. Next we have PlayStation with Buddy on the chorus. This song, it sounds like it's written from the perspective of when he's on tour or working on music or promoting himself. He's out there getting money, but what he really wants to do is be back home with the people that he cares about. He mentions all these things that he's doing, but I think the bit that really explains how he feels is, when I can't fuck with you, shit is lame. As simple as that sounds, I get it. He feels better when he's with this person or this group of people. And when you're on the road, there's only so much you can do to kick it with them. These sentiments continue on with Chicken Adobo. This song has Guapdad talking about someone who fills this void within him like chicken adobo. At first, though, it might be a little confusing hearing him say he's just trying to make it in America because he's already here. However, after listening to the last song of the album, Stoop Kid, it becomes more clear that this is probably about how his grandparents met. His grandpa was in the Marines, met his grandma in the Philippines, they got married and moved back to Oakland. I really enjoyed the song too because even without that information, it's a dope song. Although I don't know how many people want to be compared to food. The final song on 1176 is Stoop Kid. The title is in reference to the Stoop Kid from Hey Arnold, who never left his stoop. The song has Guapdad taking us through all the things that he witnessed while on the porch of his grandma's house in West Oakland. The most important part of the track, to me at least, was the outro, where he's talking about everything that led up to this album. We get the expected shout-outs to people and all the struggles that he faced along the way. But this is also where we learned about how his grandparents met and got together, moved to Oakland all those years ago. Overall, this album was really good. I know a lot of people are likely to dismiss Guapdad because they just think he's messing around all the time or joking, but he did a really good job with this album. I mentioned this on the last podcast, but prior to the release of this album, he wanted it to be known that This was meant to be listened all the way through and was supposed to be like an experience. He could have very easily put in a bunch of singles and called it a day, but that's not what he wanted to do. My favorite tracks are Uncle Ricky, Muhammad, Touch Dough, Downgrade, and Stoop Kid. I'm really happy with how this album turned out, and I'm glad that Guapdad was able to do what he wanted to with it. If you haven't checked it out already, you definitely should. That's all I got for this review. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this album, if you've checked it out, what your favorite tracks are as well. Also remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more content and reviews like this. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.